Testing is critical for a successful open enrollment. It's important you have a clear testing strategy, that you include testers outside of benefits, test expected outcomes, including failures. And what we mean by this is test something you expect to fail or stop.
Hello, friends. I'm Jeff Miller from ERPA, and you're listening to The Possibility Perspective, the show where we talk to strategic-minded Workday customers who partner with ERPA for a better Workday experience. Hello, friends. Good morning and good afternoon. My name is Jeff Miller from ERPA, and today is all about open enrollment. Lots of great content coming your way. And as you browse our table of contents, please know that our goal today is to show you helpful information provided by Workday on Community for typical configuration and requirement updates, as well as to provide some key areas where possible change would increase the level of effort or risk in the process. So Workday Community Resources, common pitfalls, best practices. And we've got our team of experts here to walk you through all of that and more, as well as cross-functional testing. And of course, we have tips and tricks sprinkled throughout our entire event today for you, and our Workday experts are going to help you out in every way that they can. Speaking of our Workday experts, what's in store for you today is a rich discussion by two seasoned pros, ERPA's own Bethany Barno and Tyler Shepard. And Bethany, I guess since your picture is on the left, we'll start with you. You want to start and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Hi, I am Bethany Barno. I am located in Louisville, Kentucky. I've been in the Workday ecosystem for 4 years now. And prior to becoming a Workday benefit consultant, I worked on the client side in human resources and benefit management for 20 years. I'm SHRM CP certified, and I am super excited to talk to you about open enrollment today.
Awesome. Thanks, Bethany. Tyler, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. My name is Tyler Shepard. I'm located in Dallas, Texas. I'm a senior consultant at ERPA. I've been in the Workday ecosystem almost 4 years, and I am certified in benefits, but I also hold certifications in HCM, reporting, and launch.
Awesome. Thank you, Bethany and Tyler. Let's go back again to our slide deck, our primary slide deck, and then Bethany, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I am super excited to be here and talk to you all today about open enrollment and knowing what you all go through day in and day out. I completely understand, having worked on the client side. Open enrollment is daunting, regardless of what system you're using to manage your open enrollment in. It can be a very overwhelming task to take on. You might have a benefit team of one or a large benefits team. You might have a large project or a small project. It's going to vary so much between organizations. So one of the first questions, I believe, people who are either just getting started in the Workday journey or maybe even a couple of years into it, they're still trying to figure out what resources do I have available to me that's offered by Workday. And I'm going to go through a few of those resources that are available to you to help you manage your open enrollment. These are going to be tools to use in your toolbox. And I'm going to share with you those tools and what you might find helpful and where they might potentially even lack a little bit and where you might need to fill in some gaps. So the first one is the open enrollment checklist. Now, this open enrollment checklist is available to download on Workday Community, and ultimately it's a list of items that you may need to access for configuration changes. Now, I know I love to work off of the checklist. I love to just check off and say, I am done with that. Yay me, let's move to the next. Now, the issue that I found with this checklist when I was using it on the client side is that it lacks some context. So it might give me a list of every task and or screen I may need to visit during open enrollment, but it doesn't tell me when I need to visit that screen and what I'm doing on that screen and what changes I might be making during open enrollment that require me to visit said screen or skip certain steps. So while it's a tool in your toolbox to use, just know that it might lack a little bit of context as far as what screens you may or may not need to visit, take action on, depending on your open enrollment changes. Now, setup considerations for open enrollment. This is another page that you can visit in Community, and this can actually help provide additional context for your checklist. Now, this includes information on why we set up open enrollment, how it fits into the rest of Workday, your downstream impacts and cross-product interactions, security requirements and business process configurations, and ultimately questions and limitations to consider before you implement your open enrollment. So I think this is helpful to use in conjunction with your checklist so you get some additional context as to what tasks you're needing to complete throughout your project. And then the last is managing open enrollment. This is an additional page that you can reference in Workday Community that basically tells you what and how you launch open enrollment in your tenant and how you manage that open enrollment process. So you'll be able to figure out how to launch open enrollment, if you need to add workers during open enrollment or remove workers from your open enrollment, possibly cancel or rescind it. Hopefully that doesn't happen. And ultimately close and finalize. There is a lot of information included in managing your open enrollment. So especially if you are new to Workday, I think this is super helpful resource for you to reference and look into. Now, like I said, community is not the end all be all when it comes to how you manage your open enrollment projects. We have some more information regarding pitfalls and best practices coming your way. But first wanted to point out what's Workday delivered when it comes to open enrollment and what's in your toolbox. With that, we are going to talk about common pitfalls and what are those gotchas when it comes to open enrollment configuration. So Tyler, tell us more about some common pitfalls.
So next we will talk about some of the common issues or pitfalls that occur during open enrollment projects. The main issues being issues with configuration, business process issues, communications being underutilized, as well as kind of a gap in reporting. For configuration issues, there are some issues that can occur that will require open enrollment to be stopped, retested, rescinded, and then launched again once the issues are fixed. And then there are other issues where we don't necessarily need to stop and rescind open enrollment and start over, but maybe just make some updates and then jump back in. For the issues where you'll need to stop and restart open enrollment, those could have to do with benefit plan eligibility rules, as well as updates to benefit group eligibility rules. It's important these are tested very thoroughly before getting very deep into open enrollment so that you don't have to rescind. Another common issue that results in open enrollment being rescinded and started over are issues with the enrollment event rule. For some of the less drastic issues where you don't necessarily need to start open enrollment over, these would be things like incorrect rates or rates that need to be updated. So it's important to make sure that rate updates are tested to ensure they are correct. Next, we have business process issues. Open enrollment has its own business process that's called change benefits for open enrollment and is very similar to the business process for other benefit events, change benefits for life event. You want to reference the change benefits for life event business process and make sure that your open enrollment business process has all of the same steps. Something that I've seen that has been left out in the past is the evidence of insurability step. It's very important that we collect this information during open enrollment. So always good to double check and make sure that step is included in the process. Next, we have communications. Communications about open enrollment can prompt workers to submit their elections sooner or even remind them that open enrollment is even going on. Lack of communication with open enrollment may result in less workers completing their elections or relying on kind of a passive open enrollment. And this could lead to benefits partners and benefits administrators receiving lots and lots of questions. And everybody has a lot to do. So if we can minimize those questions, I know that is best. I highly recommend utilizing announcements for communication. These can be set up on the homepage and they can act as kind of a reminder whenever workers log into Workday each day. I also highly recommend beefing up enrollment instructions. These are where you can add in some additional details that may help avoid confusion for workers whenever they're going through the process. Notifications and reminders, both Workday delivered as well as custom, can be extremely helpful. And some of the more underutilized communication methods that I have seen have been expanded plan details, benefits program cards, and benefits messaging. There have been some updates to the open enrollment messaging capabilities in the past few years that have made it a lot more convenient for admin and workers. So I highly recommend utilizing that. And then for our last category of common issues, we have reporting or monitoring. This is something that I think kind of applies more to other customers than maybe some others. Kind of depends on your needs, but something that I think is very important to monitor are new hire and workers on leave reports, open enrollment activity reports, such as the open enrollment status report. This is a big one. This is one where a lot of your open enrollment will be handled through. It gives you a lot of great information there. Events on hold reports, the benefit event status report is a good option there. This will help catch any benefit events that maybe have not been sent out yet, or workers that have not received their open enrollment event due to perhaps an incomplete new hire event, something along those lines. Any comparison reports you may have in your tenants. And if you've noted any gaps in reporting from previous open enrollments, please let us know so that we can address those gaps once we get started. And then we can make sure that if we need to set up something custom, or if there are any questions or concerns about the delivered reports, that we make sure to kind of bridge those gaps. And I will pass it back over to Bethany for our next topic of best practices.
All right. Thanks, Tyler. So, especially with knowing that we have a large population of customers on the call, that it might be your first open enrollment, or you've had some practice with open enrollment, but maybe you're just a year or two in. We all want to develop best practices when it comes to configuring and approaching your open enrollment project. So I am going to cover those with you today. And one of the biggest concerns I heard was timeline, right? Timelines for open enrollment is always a tricky subject, right? Because there's a lot of hands in the pot when it comes to open enrollment. It's not just the benefit manager being able to go ahead and just configure open enrollment. That's not a thing. We have to work with our insurance brokers. We might go out for an RFP. There is approvals that need to happen from the C-suite for any provider changes, rate changes. I know in my time on the client side, a lot of times I felt very rushed during open enrollment because decisions weren't being made in what I considered a timely manner. That can be challenging when it comes to your timeline. And I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to combat that, because at the end of the day, that's the reality of open enrollment. We don't live in a perfect world. And while I'm going to talk to you about an ideal open enrollment timeline, that doesn't always work that way. So we're going to start with the ideal and then give you some tips on how to work outside of that ideal open enrollment timeline. Okay, so we have our sample timeline here. And granted, this is a 10-week timeline. So this gives you a lot of space to configure and test. And we ultimately see an average of somewhere between 6 and 10 weeks for an open enrollment project. And the assumption on this open enrollment project is there are some moderate changes taking place. So we're talking about potentially a provider change or two, adding new plans, significant rate changes, things of that nature. So our timeline starts August 1st with the assumption that we want to initiate open enrollment on October 15th. So the first part of your timeline will be an open enrollment discovery, whether that's with us or just with your own internal team. Ultimately, you have to make a list of everything that is changing this year. Are you introducing new plans? Are you changing a provider? Whatever is going on, you're accumulating a list of those changes. That happens in the first part of August. Then we have the preview refresh. Don't forget that preview refreshes twice a year. And the second time that happens is in August. So August 16th, that's going to occur this year. And then we can start our preview configuration, because the first place you want to start your configuration is within your preview tenant, but you need to wait till after that refresh occurs. So the back end of August, beginning first week of September, we're doing our preview configuration, and then we move right into testing. So we give ourselves a couple weeks to go in and test what we did in preview. After we've tested and signed off, the next step is moving that configuration to production. The reason we want to move it to production is because we want to have some time to test the changes we moved in Sandbox. So we move these items into production a couple weeks in advance of launching open enrollment. That copies over to Sandbox. And then we go into Sandbox and repeat our test scenarios. Let's make sure that we've migrated everything correctly into production, because normally that is a manual process where you configure everything in preview and then you manually configure everything again in production. Once you have made those tests complete, you've completed all your test scenarios, then you can initiate your open enrollment in production. Okay, that's what it looks like in a perfect world. We don't live in a perfect world. So what do we do in that non-perfect world? Oh, and by the way, in the ideal timeline, this starts in 16 days. Not to stress anybody out, but it does start in 16 days. We are right there at the start of these open enrollment projects, right? So no pressure or anything. Okay, so best practices. Let's talk about that timeline. So first step is creating that timeline. Pro tip, just start from the end and work backwards. Do the best you can with it, all right? Try to allow 6 to 8 weeks for your project. Don't let it become an afterthought. All right, so we've worked backwards. We've created our 6 to 8 week timeline. Now, I don't have anything finalized, so I don't know what to do. Well, good news is you can get started even if everything isn't finalized. There are configuration changes that you can go ahead and start on in preview to set yourself up for success. So when those changes are finalized, you are ready to go and you can start right in with those. So creating your benefit plan, your definition, updating any open enrollment rules if you're having an active enrollment versus passive enrollment. Maybe you already have one provider finalized, but you don't have the others. Go ahead and start working on the other provider. Work on what you know, and then just hold until the others are finalized. You're going to start in preview, and then once you test, you're going to move to prod, let it refresh in Sandbox, test in Sandbox, just to ensure everything was migrated correctly. And if you are going to engage support of consultants, make sure you engage early, even if you're still unsure of all the details. That way you can get a resource aligned with you from the start, from the jump. And then try to adhere to your timeline to the best of your ability. But I think the biggest thing is sometimes people feel like they have to wait till everything is finalized. Don't wait. There are things that you can do ahead of time. And if you don't know what to do, we are happy to help answer those questions for you. Downstream impacts. So open enrollment projects definitely have downstream impacts, mainly to integrations and payroll. Does your project have new providers? Do you have new deductions and earnings codes you need to use? Are there rate changes? Even with integrations, if there's not a new provider, your current integrations will need some support because current schedules will need to stop. You need to send your open enrollment file, and you need to create a new schedule for your upcoming year. So if you need help with any of those areas, it's important to engage with payroll and integrations early. Payroll has a lot of end of year tasks that they need to complete, and there's going to be a part of open enrollment that requires payroll testing. So understanding when that payroll testing is going to occur is an important part of your timeline. And that leads me right into cross-functional testing. Now, I will tell you, we have a whole section focused on cross-functional and just testing in general. And that is probably the one thing I want everyone to take with them after this webinar is the most successful thing that you can do is have a strong testing plan for your open enrollment project. That is going to make or break open enrollment. So make sure you're engaging your impacted functional areas early and often in your testing plan and identify your testers. We always recommend including non-benefit team testers for enrollments. I know when I worked in benefits and I would create my information that I'm going to share with workers, I would always have someone who wasn't on the benefits team look over my event and just do a test in Workday. And the reason I did that was because I might be used to certain verbiage. I might think something makes sense within the event, but that's because my benefit eyes are used to seeing that, where someone who doesn't work in benefits day in and day out may not understand what any of that means on their screen. So you're going to get some great feedback if you include some non-benefit team testers for your enrollment. Also, make sure you include benefit partners, benefit admins, payroll partners, payroll admins, integrations, and anyone who is a first line of support. And then one final test that you can do is actually when it's in prod and the first moment you launch open enrollment. As soon as you get the open enrollment task in production, complete your open enrollment, because that is almost a one final test in production as an opportunity to catch any other thing that could have been missed in all of your other testing. You would rather catch it right from the jump if you have to make a correction versus the end or after the closure of open enrollment. And then Tyler mentioned reporting and just monitoring what's happening during open enrollment. So you want to make sure you identify gaps in your reporting for open enrollment. There is some Workday delivered functionality, but there are different groups of workers that you may want to track for open enrollment. You have workers on leave. Have they completed their open enrollments? You have workers whose open enrollment event may be pending because there is another benefit event blocking it because it's in progress. You need to monitor those groups of workers. Maybe you have a passive event and you have an FSA enrollment that's an active enrollment every year, and you want to monitor people who are currently enrolled in FSA and see if they're picking that up again. So there are comparison reports that you can use. So it's really important to identify where you are missing those areas and what you need to help you successfully manage your open enrollment. Also keep in mind that custom reporting, you can also leverage that to send custom notifications to your employees throughout open enrollment. So, for example, you can set up a custom report that looks for workers who are in progress or not started, and at certain intervals within your open enrollment window, they can get automated reminders for them to complete their open enrollment. And that's just one example of many and different ways that we can communicate. But reporting is a very good area in which you can get a lot of information to help you manage your open enrollment. So whatever we can do to help you with that, let us know. There's some other tools out there that are available to help you with your management of changes. So there are benefit EIBs that you can leverage to help you change calculated rates for healthcare and insurance. You can also leverage EIBs for benefit annual rates if you use those in Workday, as well as individual rates, again, if they're applicable in your system. You can also use EIBs to update any worker wellness data as well. Might help you make those changes a little bit faster. And then finally, you have the benefits and pay hub. So this is where workers go to make changes to their benefits. They can look at their current enrollments. Now, the benefit and pay hub, you can configure this to put some announcements in there as far as open enrollment is in progress. Workers can also access their benefit event through the benefit and pay hub. They also access it within their Workday inbox. It's just another place they can get to the event. And then, of course, we have benefit program cards, another opportunity for you to communicate plan information to your workers. And then one of the big questions we get is if an employee has submitted their elections during open enrollment and wants to make a change, can they access their event again? Yes, they can. If you have them go to the Benefit and Pay Hub on the Overview tab, they can access their submitted benefit event as long as the open enrollment window is still open. Click Edit, and they can go back into their event and make changes. All right. So Next up, how much work is this going to be? So, Tyler, take it away.
Perfect. Yeah. So how much work is this actually going to be? We've classified our open enrollment projects into 3 levels. That's higher effort updates, medium effort updates, and low effort updates. We'll start with the higher effort updates. These could include consolidation of plan designs, significant changes to benefit groups, such as changes to their eligibility rules, or creation of new groups. Something else that could kind of push an open enrollment project to be higher effort are new populations of employees coming into the system, whether that be mergers or acquisitions. Or if it's your first time going through open enrollment in Workday. And also just any new benefits configurations that are not currently in place. We'll touch on this a little bit further through the next slides, but if we are basically just creating a new plan for a coverage type that already exists, probably not going to be very complicated. But if we are creating a new coverage type, it's going to take a little bit more effort. Moving into the medium effort updates, these include changes to benefits or open enrollment, but the changes or updates are not as extensive. These could be benefit plan provider changes, introduction of supplemental plans such as critical illness, hospital indemnity, accident, or I've even seen cancer benefit plans. This could also include introduction of or updates to benefit plans that require creative design solutions, such as long-term care plans or plans where we may need to utilize an individual rate. And then for our final tier, these are going to be the lower effort updates. It's important to note that this tier is not necessarily like a low effort tier. It's just less effort than the other 2. It's still going to require lots of testing and adhering to a strict timeline, but it won't be as intense as the others. This would include new benefit plans from the same provider, rate updates and limit updates, such as maybe a healthcare rate update or HSA limit updates. If we have some new links to providers' third-party sites, updating those links for providers would be an item that would be relatively low effort. Updates to enrollment instructions or new custom validations could be some other items that would be low effort. However, it's important to note that custom validations can get a little complex. So the amount of effort with some of these more creative solutions would kind of need to be scoped out. And now I'll pass it back over to Bethany to jump into our next topic of cross-functional testing.
Cross-functional testing. So I have to say, and I'll drive it home again, testing is going to make or break your open enrollment. It is so critical to have a strong testing plan. Let's talk about how we can achieve this. All right. We have this broken out into 3 sections here, just some high-level tips, and then I'm going to talk about a testing script. Okay. First, we have benefits. So as a benefit tester, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to test my open enrollment changes first. Then I'm going to test the coordination of events and then life events. I know that this is a hot topic for open enrollment and how you manage the reprocessing of open enrollments and new hires and how all of that works together. That is a lot, and it should be part of your testing plan. And I can't get too far into the weeds with that today because it is so dependent on what is going on in your specific tenant on how you want to manage some of this. So if you have questions about how you manage it, please let us know. But there are definitely configuration things that we can do and reports that we can introduce to help you manage those items. There's also payroll considerations when it comes to testing, and we recommend testing the last payroll of the current year for all the old rates and the first payroll of new year, all your new rates. And then, of course, with integrations, testing requirements are ultimately driven by the provider. All right. I'll say it one more time. Testing is critical for a successful open enrollment. It's important you have a clear testing strategy, that you include testers outside of benefits, test expected outcomes, including failures. And what we mean by this is test something you expect to fail or stop. So, for example, you can't elect an HSA without enrolling in an HDHP plan. Do something called negative testing. You're going to make sure that if I test and enroll in a PPO plan, that I cannot elect an HSA plan. Those are things that can be easily missed because an assumption is made that it will stop because I was able to elect the HSA with the HDHP. You have to test both ways. Coordinate with integration and payroll testers. And of course, ask for help. If you feel like you're in over your head, there are resources out there available to you, whether it's Workday Community, your own internal resources, or outside consultants. There is help available. All right. So when it comes to testing, we recommend that you have a testing script. It's important to think through all the changes you've made and what scenarios you need to test to make sure it's working as expected. And a healthy testing script is going to be organized in a way that includes what is ultimately in scope, a description of what you're testing, what the expected result is, what the actual result is, who tested it, what employee IDs were tested, and did it pass or fail? This helps you not only keep track of what's been tested, who's been tested, and who is doing the testing, but it also gives you something to refer back to in your next year. So I think that is super helpful because as you test, you also learn things about your tenant and things that are set up because 9 times out of 10, when you tackle an open enrollment project, you may stumble across something in your tenant that just isn't working the way you expected it to work that has nothing to do with your open enrollment changes, right? It's just important to keep track of what you're testing, what you've learned from that test, and ultimately making sure every scenario has passed. Because unfortunately, there are some things in Workday that if it's not configured right when you launch open enrollment, you will have to stop open enrollment, rescind open enrollment, fix the issue, and start all over again. And we want to avoid that at all costs. So we are more than happy to help you with all of your testing support needs. But if you take one thing away, make sure it is test, 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 test.
Tyler and Bethany, phenomenal job. Absolutely ridiculous amount of information that was incredibly helpful. Thank you to the two of you for all of your hard work preparing this. We hope that you found this information helpful. We would love to be in touch with you again. If you have any needs related to Workday, we can be your Workday partner for any of your needs. We hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for listening to The Possibility Perspective. If you'd like to talk to ERPA about what's next in your Workday journey, be sure to visit ERPA.com.